the day Caleb and Stephanie celebrated their first wedding anniversary? They threw a party. 50 people. Backyard lights strung between the trees. A catered dinner. A custom cake with their initials. Everyone laughing. Dancing. Toasting to their love story. And I was there. Standing near the back. Holding a glass of champagne. Smiling at exactly the right moments. Because I had waited exactly 1 year. 365 days. And tonight, I was finally ready. My name is Lauren. And what I am about to tell you is the story of the two people I loved most in this world. And what they did to me behind my back. And why I chose silence over screaming. And why that silence was the most powerful thing I ever did. But you need to understand where this all began. Because this story does not start with a wedding. It starts with 2 little girls. And a promise that was supposed to last forever. I met Stephanie in Caldwell on the first day of 3rd grade. Riverside Elementary School. Cincinnati, Ohio. I was 8 years old and I had just moved to a new neighborhood and I knew absolutely nobody. I sat down at a lunch table completely alone. And a girl with red hair and freckles and the loudest laugh I had ever heard sat down across from me and said, "You look lost. I'm Stephanie. You can be my best friend if you want." Just like that. No hesitation. No calculation. Just, "You can be my best friend if you want." I said yes. And for the next 22 years, that is exactly what we were. Best friends. The kind of best friends that people write about. We went to the same middle school. The same high school. We chose the same college, University of Cincinnati, because neither of us could imagine being in different cities. We were roommates for 3 years. We were in each other's lives for every single important moment. When Stephanie's father Gerald had his first heart attack, I drove 4 hours through the night to be at the hospital. When my parents Frank and Carol divorced, Stephanie sat with me on my bedroom floor for 6 hours while I cried. When I got my first real job as a graphic designer at a firm in Cincinnati, Stephanie showed up at my apartment with balloons and Chinese food. When Stephanie was passed over for a promotion she deserved, I took her to dinner and spent 3 hours reminding her of everything she was worth. We were each other's person. Completely and without question. And then there was my brother. Caleb. My brother Caleb was 3 years older than me. He was, and I say this as someone who loves him, complicated. Charming when he wanted to be. Funny. Quick. The kind of person who could walk into any room and make everyone feel like they had known him for years. But underneath that charm was someone who had always struggled with consistency. He had started and abandoned 4 different careers by the time he was 30. Bartender. Real estate agent. Personal trainer. Sales manager. He dated women intensely and briefly. Usually the relationship would be overwhelming at the start, constant attention, grand gestures, declarations, and then slowly fade into distance and excuses. 3 serious relationships. All ended the same way. The woman eventually realizing that the version of Caleb she had fallen for was not the version that showed up every day. My mother Carol made excuses for him constantly. My father Frank, after the divorce, had largely stepped back from both of our lives. So it was mostly me who saw Caleb clearly. Who loved him clearly. Who worried about him clearly. Stephanie had met Caleb dozens of times over the years. Birthday parties. Holiday dinners. Casual gatherings at my apartment. She always thought he was funny. Entertaining. She used the word magnetic once. I remember telling her, "He's magnetic until he disappears. Just don't fall for it." She laughed. She said, "Lauren. He's your brother. Not my type at all." I believed her. I had no reason not to. And then, everything changed in a single weekend. It was a long weekend in July. I had planned a trip for 3 of us, me, Stephanie, and our friend Danielle, to a lake house rental about 2 hours outside Cincinnati. 4 days. Swimming. Bonfires. Complete relaxation. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, Danielle's son got sick. She had to cancel. So it was just me and Stephanie. And then, the night before we left, Caleb called me. He said he had a free weekend. Asked what I was doing. I told him about the lake house. He said, "Can I come? I just need to get out of the city." Caleb had been going through something. A relationship had just ended badly. He seemed genuinely low. I felt for him. I said yes. I should tell you, I did not think twice about it. Stephanie and Caleb were not strangers. We had all spent time together before. It was a casual trip. I genuinely did not see anything coming. The 4 days at the lake were, from my perspective, completely normal. We swam. We cooked. We watched movies. We sat around a bonfire every night. Caleb and Stephanie talked a lot. I noticed they had easy conversation. I thought nothing of it. Stephanie was friendly and warm with everyone. That was just who she was. When we drove home on Monday, I dropped Stephanie at her apartment first. She hugged me at the car and said, "That was exactly what I needed. Love you." I said, "Love you too." I drove Caleb back to his place. He was quiet in the car. I asked if he was okay. He said, "Yeah. Really good actually." I thought it was the fresh air. I thought nothing of it. 3 weeks later, Stephanie told me she was seeing someone new. I asked who. She hesitated. Just for a half second. Then she said a name that was not Caleb. A name I had never heard before. Jason. She described him vaguely. Said it was very new. Said she would tell me more when there was more to tell. Something felt slightly off. I pushed the feeling down. I trusted her completely.
For 4 months, Stephanie talked about Jason. Casually. Briefly. Always vague. Things are going well. He's really sweet. We went to dinner last weekend. She never showed me photos. She never suggested a double date. She never gave me his last name. I told myself I was being paranoid. That not every relationship needed to be immediately shared in full detail. I gave her space. During those same 4 months, Caleb was also acting differently. He seemed lighter. Happier. More settled than I had seen him in years. I asked if he was seeing someone. He said, "Kind of. Just seeing how it goes. Don't want to jinx it." I was genuinely happy for him. I thought, finally. Maybe this one is different. I did not connect the two. I did not allow myself to. And then month 5, I called Stephanie on a Wednesday evening and she didn't answer. I called again Thursday morning. Voicemail. I texted. Short replies. Busy week. Talk soon. This went on for 2 weeks. Stephanie had never gone 2 weeks with minimal contact in 22 years. I called Caleb to vent about it, to ask if he had noticed anything strange, just wanting my brother's outside perspective. He didn't answer either. I called my mother Carol. She was warm but distracted on the phone. Said Caleb seemed happy lately. Said she hadn't seen Stephanie in a while. Then she said, almost too casually, "Oh, I'm sure everything is fine, Lauren. People get busy." Something in her voice. I cannot explain it exactly. But something in her voice told me she knew something. And was choosing not to tell me. I sat with that feeling for 3 days. And then I drove to Caleb's apartment unannounced. It was a Saturday morning. I knocked on Caleb's door. 30 seconds of silence. Then the door opened. And Stephanie was standing there. In Caleb's apartment. At 9 in the morning. wearing his sweatshirt. We stared at each other. Neither of us spoke for what felt like a very long time. Then Caleb appeared behind her. His face went through about 6 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise. Guilt. Resignation. He said, "Lauren, come in." I walked in. I sat down on his couch. And they told me everything. The lake house weekend, something had happened on the last night. A conversation that went long. A moment. They had been together since August. 4 months. Jason had never existed. The entire story, made up. To keep me from knowing. They were, in Caleb's words, serious. In Stephanie's words, completely in love. They had been waiting to tell me. They had been trying to find the right moment. I sat on that couch and I listened to all of it. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I looked at my brother. Then I looked at my best friend of 22 years. And I said, "I need some time." I stood up. I picked up my bag. And I walked out. They called after me. I did not turn around. I got in my car. I drove home. And I sat in my apartment alone for the rest of that day. Processing the specific kind of pain that comes not from one betrayal, but from 2. Simultaneously. From the 2 people you trusted without question. What happened next surprised even me. I expected to be angry. I expected the anger to pour out of me in waves, at Stephanie for lying for 4 months, at Caleb for hiding it, at my mother for clearly knowing and saying nothing. But the anger did not come the way I expected. Instead, something very quiet settled over me. A clarity. I thought about what screaming would accomplish. It would give them a reaction to respond to. It would make the situation about my emotions rather than their choices. It would make me look like the problem. And most importantly, it would be over quickly. A fight. Tears. Apologies. Awkward family dinners. Everyone would move on. And what they had done, the 4 months of lies, the invented boyfriend, the calculated secrecy, would get buried under reconciliation. I did not want that. So I made a different choice. I called Stephanie. I said, "I'm not ready to talk yet. I need time. Please give me that." She said, "Lauren, I am so sorry. Please just let me explain." I said, "I heard your explanation. I need time." I called Caleb. Same conversation. Then I called my mother Carol. I said, "How long did you know?" A long pause. She said, "Caleb told me 2 months ago. He made me promise not to say anything. He said they wanted to tell you themselves." I said, "Okay, Mom." She said, "Lauren." I said, "I'll talk to you soon." And then I went quiet. Not dramatically. Not with a speech. I just stepped back. Stopped initiating. Responded minimally when contacted. Attended family events when necessary, Thanksgiving, Christmas, was present, polite, and completely unreadable. Stephanie reached out consistently for the first 2 months. Long texts. Voicemails. A handwritten letter that was 4 pages long. I read every word. I did not respond to any of it. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I was not ready. And I had decided I would not engage until I was completely ready. Not one day before.
I want to tell you what I did during those 12 months. Because I did not spend them suffering. I spent them building. Within the first month I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Moore in Cincinnati. I want to be honest about this because I think it matters. I was not okay. Underneath the calm exterior I had chosen to show, I was grieving. Not one loss. 2. The brother I thought I knew. The best friend I thought I had. Dr. Moore helped me understand something important. That my silence was not suppression. It was not me avoiding the pain. It was me choosing the timeline on which I would process and respond. There is a difference. A significant one. During those 12 months I also made changes in my professional life. I had been at the same graphic design firm for 4 years. Comfortable. Stable. Not growing. I started freelancing on weekends. Built a small client base. By month 8 I had enough freelance income to seriously consider going independent. By month 10 I handed in my notice. By month 12, the month of their anniversary, I had launched my own small design studio. 3 clients. A proper LLC. A business bank account. Something that was entirely mine. Built in the space that grief had opened up. I also did something else during those 12 months. I wrote. Not for anyone to read. Just for me. Every single thing I felt. Every memory with Stephanie. Every moment with Caleb. Every conversation I replayed. I wrote it all down. And somewhere around month 9, I realized I was not angry anymore. Not at Caleb. Not at Stephanie. I was something more complicated than angry. I was clear. And clarity, I had learned, is far more powerful than rage. They invited me to the anniversary party. Of course they did. Caleb called personally. He said, "Lauren, I know this year has been hard. I know we hurt you. But you are my sister and I want you there. Please come." His voice was genuine. I believed that he meant it. I said, "I'll be there." He sounded so relieved. I drove to their house. They had bought a house together 6 months after the wedding, in a suburb 20 minutes from Cincinnati, on a Saturday evening in July. Exactly 1 year after that lake house weekend. The party was beautiful. String lights. Catered food. 50 people who loved them. I arrived. I hugged Caleb. I hugged Stephanie. Stephanie held on longer than necessary. She whispered, "I'm so glad you came." I smiled. Said nothing. I moved through the party quietly. Talked to cousins. Talked to neighbors I recognized. Accepted a glass of champagne. And then, about 2 hours in, Caleb tapped his glass. He made a toast. He talked about the past year. About building a life with Stephanie. About how grateful he was for everyone who had supported them. He looked at me near the end. He said, "And to my sister Lauren, who has always been the strongest person I know. I love you." Everyone looked at me. I raised my glass. I smiled. And then, I set down my champagne. I opened my bag. I took out 2 envelopes. I walked to where Caleb and Stephanie were standing. I handed 1 envelope to each of them. Stephanie looked confused. She said, "What is this?" I said, "An anniversary gift. Open them later. When the party is over and it's just the 2 of you." Caleb said, "Lauren." I hugged him. I hugged Stephanie. I said, "Congratulations. I mean that." And then I left the party. Got in my car. And drove home. Completely calm. Completely ready for what came next. Caleb called me at 11:47 that night. I answered. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Lauren." I read the letter. I said, "Okay." He said, I don't know what to say." I said, "You don't have to say anything tonight." The envelopes had contained letters. Handwritten. Everything I had written during those 12 months, distilled into 2 letters. 1 for Caleb. 1 for Stephanie. Not angry letters. Not accusatory. Honest letters. I told Caleb exactly what his secrecy had felt like. Not the relationship, the hiding. The 4 months of watching me worry about Stephanie while he said nothing. The choice to protect his own comfort over my right to know. I told him I loved him. That I would always love him. But that love without honesty was just performance. And I needed him to understand the difference. Stephanie's letter was longer. 22 years. I wrote about 22 years. Every moment she had been there for me. Every moment I had been there for her. And then I wrote about the 4 months. The invented boyfriend. The vague texts. The deliberate distance while she stood in my brother's apartment every weekend. I told her that the relationship itself I could have handled. It was the lies I could not move past easily. I told her I missed her. That I had missed her every single day of those 12 months. But that I needed her to understand what she had chosen, and why it mattered. Stephanie called 10 minutes after Caleb. She was crying before she said a word. She said, "Lauren. I am so sorry. I have been sorry every single day. I should have told you immediately. I was a coward and I was selfish and I am so sorry." I listened to all of it. Then I said, "I know. I believe you. And I forgive you." She cried harder. I said, "But Stephanie, forgiveness is not the same as everything going back to what it was. We have to build something new. And that takes time. And honesty. From here forward, complete honesty." She said, "Yes. Whatever it takes." I believed her. This time, I believed her. It has been 2 years since that anniversary party. Caleb and Stephanie are still together. They're genuinely good together. He is more settled than I have ever seen him. She is happy in a way that is deep and quiet rather than loud and performed. Do I think they handled it right at the beginning? No. Not even close. But people are complicated. Love makes people do things that fear and selfishness drive, and sometimes the people we love most are capable of the worst decisions. What I know is this. Stephanie and I are rebuilding. Slowly. Carefully. It is different than before. It will never be exactly what it was. But different does not always mean less. Sometimes different means more honest. More real. More chosen. My design studio now has 11 clients and 2 part-time employees. I built it in the year they thought I was falling apart. Dr. Moore told me once. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who has hurt you is become extraordinary in their absence. I wrote that down. I think about it often. Because silence, real, intentional, purposeful silence, is not weakness. It is the loudest thing you can say. And sometimes, it is the only thing worth saying.